All right. Hello, everyone. Hi, welcome back to the session. So this is your the next day, and definitely we are learning C++ in the correct way. We have already learned the syntax. We have understood how to work around with the arrays, what is dynamic allocation, and how do we create dynamic arrays. We have looked into the different loops. We talked about the switch statement, how it works, the switcher for different cases. We went and talked about the different logic of different loops and how to work around with them, right? Great. That's fair enough. Let us talk about few more things in our programming language that are quite important in a way that when we talk about the data structures that we are talking about, right? We initially start off with the very bare basics, which is like a string, integer, boolean, float, double, maybe an array, a multi-dimensional array, things like that, right? You already know the limitations of arrays, that an array can either be static or dynamic, but in both cases, the array is only handling, uh, you can say, a single data type, right? When we talk about single data type, it basically means that either it could be an array of integers, or it could be an array of strings, or an array of float, right? So in that terms, in that aspect, the idea is that what if we want to store different data types in the form of array, right? So that is where the study and research of data structures comes into picture, right? So what exactly are we talking about here? So we are talking about different ideas in which the data can be stored, right? So the correct way to understand data structures is to look into the aspect of human innovations, right? See, we as humans are problem solvers. So we create things that definitely tend to solve a particular use case, right? So data structures should be thought and looked upon with that mentality that someone created it for a very particular reason, right? And there's no hard and fast rule why linked lists were created, why maybe hash maps were created. There is a particular use case, and then there's a solution. Now, until and unless you are not able to solve a use case, you do not create a solution for it, right? Like, you try to use existing solutions, and until and unless things are working for you, innovation never finds its path coming in their point, right? So, IT industry has evolved with such tremendous pace that most of the data structures have become so generic that they tend to solve majority of the problems, right? There could be some edge cases where we might need to create our own data structure. We might need to define some own way to store and manage, manipulate or handle data, right? Ideally, I'll tell you that as a developer, even if you know how arrays work, if you know how hash maps work, or in terms of a list, tuple, dictionary, you know in Python how these things work, you are more than sufficient to work around with programming languages, right? Now, why we tell that C++ or C is the father of all programming languages? Because this is where things boil down to low level, right? See, as a Python developer, if you do not have a background into IT, you do not have the correct knowledge of how a programming language works, for you, things as simple as maybe a list or a tuple or dictionary are more than enough. But you will never have the vision to look into it that dictionary is a hash map, and tuple or array is like, sorry, tuple or list is like an array, right? So data structure is a kind of a field which becomes language proof or is not language specific, right? See, if you are understanding data structures, then you cannot say that I'm understanding data structures only with C++ or only with Python, right? If at all there is a data structure, a common data structure which cannot be made in a programming language, then that's more of a language level limitation, right? Ideally, data structures are theory. Data structures are concepts that how data should be structured, and the way you code it is totally you, right? You apply this concept in reality using a programming language, right? That's you in real world. So before we even dwell to that zone and understand different data structures, let us first come back and try to understand few more regimes or paradigms of programming that we should cover even at high level it works for now. So we understand that a programming language is something that is used to write set of instructions. We understand that any IDE, integrated development environment, is a software which compiles more like a notepad with few features that help us write better code. Any notepad or any UI through which we can type, or even a basic UI like a terminal or like a commandlet, okay, CMDlet or terminal, where you can interact with the low level um, hardware components or assembly components. That's where you write program which is then compiled and translated to machine level language, right? So, as a developer, you should also have the mindset to understand the zones of programming language. See, a computer is a non-living thing. So is the component that is like a CPU or a GPU or a RAM, right? So, how do they understand these things? How do they try to mimic to a point that they were talking to us in natural language, right? It is all because it boils down to binary. Binary is the language of CPU. CPU or जीपीयू और रैम कोई भी कंपोनेंट को सिर्फ बाइनरी समझते हैं, दैट इज वंस एंड जीरोस. और क्यों बाइनरी इज द मोस्ट सुटेबल लैंग्वेज? क्योंकि इन चीजों को हम करंट से चलाते हैं. इलेक्ट्रिसिटी इज समथिंग दैट मेक्स दिस थिंग्स वर्क, राइट? तो इन अ इलेक्ट्रिकल सर्किट, इफ यू पास अ वोल्टेज और इफ यू पास अ करंट, राइट, यू पास करंट फॉर सर्टेन लेवल, उसको 1 बोल देगा. एक सर्टेन लेवल पे करंट पास करो, उसको 0 बोल देगा. एंड द ट्रांसफर स्पीड इज सो फास्ट दैट you can translate bits and bytes and maybe kilobytes or maybe megabytes in seconds, right? So many of इसको flops बोलते हैं, like how many teraflops or how many, depends upon the computer, depends on the CPU कितना ज़्यादा process कर सकता है एक बार में. So it is able to consume all these ones and zeros, right? And these are then boiled down to assembly level, like CPU can now talk to GPU, GPU can now talk to RAM, like पूरा motherboard एक दूसरे से बात कर पा रहा है. इस level पे programming होती है. That is very bare basics. ये ones and zeros में बात हो रही होती है यहाँ पर. Then we boil down to something known as the extreme low level language, जो can be used by your terminal uh, to your assembly level, है ना? तो यहीं कहीं पर आपका C++ और C आके बैठता है, which is why we call it father of programming languages, क्योंकि this is a very low level. यहाँ पर you can even go down to break the component level पे जाके you can create code at a purest level, lowest level पे डिजाइन कर सकते हैं आप code using these languages, which is why they are so sought out, है ना? And the reason why Python is so high level is because you are able to learn it quickly. Because high level language मतलब वो which is more towards human capacity. तो जो natural language है like हिंदी, English और the languages we speak, वो highest level मानी जाती हैं. And the lowest level language है binary 1 and 0. तो इसके बीच में कहीं ना कहीं this programming languages sit, and based upon it, however you are working, at the end the logic is very simple. It has to work with some arithmetic operations, some comparative operations, है ना? Maybe some assignment operators, few of the basic mathematics, plus minus divide ये करना, compare करना, logic बनाना, if else करना, boolean use करना, list use करना, tuple use करना. These are few basic things which are not at all difficult. You can learn them in day or 2 or 3 to the max. And congratulations, you're already you can say a basic level developer. You can write simple codes, like you can write a code how to create a calculator. You can then learn functions. Then you should now start thinking about different programming approaches, like procedural oriented programming, function oriented programming, object oriented programming. So object oriented programming is such a hype that it makes us feel that the it is a very difficult concept to learn. Some people might have that mentality, but at the end, again, if we boil down, it is a very simple logic. And I'll not even go to the points of abstraction, polymorphism, or maybe like the 5 regimes of OOPS. I'll just stick to the concept. Object-oriented programming का मतलब क्या है? What does it mean, right? So let us understand that today, as a developer, I'll take automobile industry example. Today, as developer, I started manufacturing with bikes. Okay, अब इसको compare it to a programming approach. आप एक developer हो, आपको किसी ने एक program दे दिया that you write a code to create a bike. So bike में there are many different components that you will create, right? You will create the gear mechanism, then you will create headlights, you will create horn to honk, right? Signal lights, left wale, right wale, accelerator mechanism, brake mechanism, right? Then different UI aa jayega us pe, stickers, colors, seat, and there's so much more that can go into it, right? So the idea is that you've written so much of code. Now when you translate, now you go to a different, like your same company is now developing different bikes. Okay. So rather than, for example, suppose today I am writing a code for a Hero Honda bike or a Hero bike. Now I switch to Honda bike. Now I switch to maybe Kawasaki bike, and I switch to Royal Enfield bike. Doesn't it make sense that headlights ka logic should remain same? Doesn't it make sense that horns ka logic should remain same, right? Why do I have to write code again and again and again, right? At the end, it is not even a big deal to understand that many companies use the bare bone, the basic chassis same, उसके ऊपर एस्थेटिक चढ़ा के चीजें डिफरेंट बना देते हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, जब मैन्युफैक्चरिंग स्टार्ट होती है फॉर रॉयल एनफील्ड GT650, फॉर रॉयल एनफील्ड इंटरसेप्टर 650, उनका बेसिक चेसी और स्ट्रक्चर सेम प्लेटफॉर्म पे स्टार्ट होता है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, टाटा की कार इंडिका थी, फिर टाटा की बीच में भी वेरिएशन आते रहे. अब टाटा की कार नेक्सॉन है, तो नेक्सॉन इज स्टिल यूजिंग द फ्रेमवर्क ऑफ इंडिका. आइडिया इज कि जब आपने एक बेसिक चीज बना ली है, व्हाई टू क्रिएट इट अगेन एंड अगेन फॉर डिफरेंट प्रोजेक्ट्स जब रीयूज हो सकती है. तो जब मुझे हॉर्न का लॉजिक पता है, मुझे ब्रेक का लॉजिक पता है, मुझे एक्सीलरेटर का लॉजिक पता है, आई जस्ट नीड टू फ्यू मोर कंपोनेंट्स हियर एंड देयर, है ना. थोड़ा ब्रेक का चेंजेस करने पड़ेंगे, इसमें थोड़ा ज्यादा पावरफुल ब्रेक लगेगा, कम लगेगा, तो उसके वेरिएबल्स थोड़ा चेंज, कोड में चेंजेस आएंगे. मे बी इसका एक्सीलरेटर थोड़ा डिफरेंट टाइप से चलेगा, कैपेसिटी ऊपर नीचे होगी. सो बेस्ड अपॉन दैट, व्हाट वी विल डू इज वी विल यूज ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड प्रोग्रामिंग. ठीक है. कल चल के मुझे अगर 100 बाइक्स भी बनानी है, तो आई विल क्रिएट अ ब्लूप्रिंट, है ना. दैट ब्लूप्रिंट इज माय क्लास, उसको क्लास बोलते हैं. वो क्लास में मैं क्या डिफाइन कर दूंगा कि एक क्लास बना दो बाय द नेम ऑफ बाइक, और उसमें कुछ लॉजिक्स डिफाइन कर दो. एक्सीलरेटर का फिक्स लॉजिक, ब्रेक का फिक्स लॉजिक, हेडलाइट का फिक्स लॉजिक, हॉर्न का फिक्स लॉजिक. गेट दैट पॉइंट. अब मुझे अगर एक पर्टिकुलर बाइक इन रियलिटी बनानी है, तो मैं उसको नाम दूंगा, जैसे रॉयल एनफील्ड इंटरसेप्टर 650. उसमें जो जो चीजें लगानी है मुझे बाय डिफॉल्ट क्लास की, तो थोड़ा मॉडिफाई करके लगा दूंगा, यानी कि रीयूजेबिलिटी हो गई. अब मुझे दूसरा प्रोडक्ट बनाना है, रॉयल एनफील्ड GT650, सेम कुछ प्रोडक्ट्स यूज कर लूंगा. इनफैक्ट हो सकता है कि अब किसी ऑब्जेक्ट में से भी कुछ चीजें उठा लूं. इंटरसेप्टर 650 में भी कुछ ऐसे कोड होंगे जो वहीं से कॉपी पेस्ट कर लूं. तो दिस इज वेयर ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड प्रोग्रामिंग कम्स इनटू पिक्चर, and it helps us write objects, है ना. It helps us create objects using a blueprint. That's the most important and fundamental concept of object oriented programming. Okay. Now in any programming language, we can define class by using the syntax provided by the developer of that programming language, right? So class बनाने का very simple syntax है. class लिखो, नीचे से कुछ attributes लिखो. ठीक है. For example, ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड प्रोग्रामिंग ना हमेशा रियल वर्ल्ड से बहुत ज्यादा समझी जा सकती है. जैसे एज अ ह्यूमन, है ना, एज अ ह्यूमन, व्हाट इज वेरी यूनिक टू मी कुड बी माय आधार नंबर और माय फिंगरप्रिंट, है ना, और माय डीएनए और माय जेनेटिक्स कुड बी वेरी यूनिक टू मी. लाइक इन बिलियंस एंड जिलियंस ऑफ ह्यूमन जो अवेलेबल है, सब में सिर्फ मैं इकलौता हूँ विच विल हैव वेरी यूनिक फिंगरप्रिंट ऑफ माइन. तो द आइडिया इज, ठीक है, ये तो हो गया, बट देयर आर मेनी थिंग्स व्हिच आर वेरी कॉमन टू ऑल ऑफ अस. इनफैक्ट कॉमन ही रहते हैं सबको, राइट? The first thing is your eyes, your ears, your mouth, your number of legs, number of hands, right? It all remains same. तो characteristics जो है वो same होते हैं. So even when we create objects, हमें उनके characteristics define करने पड़ते हैं, जो कि common by default. जैसे एक human अगर birth कर ले रहा है, तो by birth a human should have a defined characteristics, right? That is how an object is created in object-oriented programming. कल चल के मुझे एक बाइक स्टार्ट करनी है, एक बाइक का कोड लिखना है, I have to create a bike. I'll start from ground zero and it will come by default with some attributes of its own. Okay. For example, if I buy 100 phones of same brand, जैसे मान लो Samsung Galaxy S23 के मैंने 100 फोन खरीद लिए. When I'm bringing them out of the box for the first time, मैं इनको जिंदा कर रहा हूँ इन phones को, I'm making them alive. They by default have all same characteristics. ठीक है. अब इसमें थोड़ी कस्टमाइजेशन करके, लाइक थोड़े एप्स इसमें यूनिक है, थोड़े एप्स इसमें यूनिक है. I have written some special code for this model, this object. That is a different case. But everything's in ground zero starts from same level, and that is what class and objects are supposed to do. In fact, that is really interesting. Now, Let us understand in C++, how do we implement data structures? है ना? So now we will go back, since we understand class and object, how they are done. We will put our attention to linked list at this point. Okay? So I'll just share one example in front of you, as you might all be able to see it. See, linked list is a concept. It is an idea. Okay? So again, it works with dynamic memory. The idea is that suppose if I'm storing something in RAM, okay, RAM is supposed to work in dynamic memory. So at that address, if I've stored something, okay, and now I have to mimic an array actually, but an array which is much more versatile, an array which can store different data types. इसमें मैं हो सकता है एक एड्रेस पे इंटीजर रख रहा हूँ तो अगले एड्रेस पे उसका स्ट्रिंग रख दूँ. Okay, that's also quite possible. So the idea is that wherever I'm storing something, इस house address में, इस address location पे I'll store two different things to begin with, है ना? One is the actual data. जैसे अगर मैं a is equals to 10 लिख रहा हूँ as a variable, तो मैं 10 के साथ ना उसके मेटा डेटा में, which means उसके 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 साथ एक चीज चिपका दूंगा 10 के साथ, which is कि इसका नेक्स्ट पॉइंटर कहाँ जा रहा है. नेक्स्ट पॉइंटर का मतलब क्या होता है? दिस थिंग मीन्स दैट ठीक है, a में 10 तो स्टोर हो गया, बट a के अंदर एक और हिडन चीज स्टोर हो गई है, which is like an arrow. Now this arrow will point to another memory location. ठीक है? Consider this to be more like, I do not exactly remember the scavenger hunt. I think that's the name of the game. Scavenger hunt. What does it do is that if you find the very first clue, that clue not only gives you the data which is holding, but also a hint to where that next clue can be, right? Just in this case, there is no hint. There's a defined definition and a perfect address where the next clue is, right? So that's how linked list work. Now, linked list could be singly linked list or doubly linked list or circularly linked list. The idea is that if you understand singly linked list, you by default should understand doubly and circularly, right? So I'll explain you circular and double also just after I cover up the single linked list. So the idea is that suppose that on the very first element, Mando at a point A, let me call it A, X, Y, Z, whatever you want to call it. I will call the first point as A. And now let me also in a very subtle manner replace the word point with a node. Okay. Let me call points as nodes. Okay. Because in linked list data structure, we call each point as a node. Okay. So on my first node, I not only have a data point A, but it will also have the address to where the next data should be stored, right? Okay, that would be B. And on B, suppose if I store anything, then I'll point to the next. Suppose C. Suppose I also store something on C, then it will point to D. But now I'm done storing. Okay, I do not want to store anymore. So D should then point to null. Okay, what would this mean is that when I start traversing through this list, when I start sequentially moving from my data points, A से मैं B पे गया, B से मैं C पे गया, C से मैं D पे गया, how will I know that D is the end or D is the tail of this list? Is because D is now pointing to null. So यहाँ से what is the idea that we come up with? The idea that initializes here is that null ढूंढना है. Null जिस node पे मिल रहा है, which means that is the last node. Similarly, head क्या होगा? Head is the starting address of this linked list. Okay. Imagine we are again going back to scavenger hunt game. ठीक है, जिसमें we have hidden clues here and there, but we forgot to give you the very first hint. If you do not have the first hint, आपके पास linkage ही खत्म हो गई है. You will not be able to realize where is second node, third node, fourth node अगर आपको head ही नहीं पता. So linked list का अगर सिर्फ and only and if you know the head is like the starting node कहाँ कौन से एड्रेस पे पड़ी है. If you know only this thing, more than enough, then you can completely find all the elements because of it, right? These are chained elements. If I know where is A से मैं फिर मैं पूछ लूंगा where is B, and then B will give me where is C, and then C will give me where is D, and so on, right? But if I don't know where A is, my linked list is lost. So that's the core idea, and I hope you guys were able to understand that what I mean to say, that what is a head and what is a tail, and why tail should point at null, especially for singly linked list. So let us also start thinking about the point that what if I am creating linked list for the very first time and I have zero data in it, right? So let me see in the chat section if any one of you is smart enough to answer that if in linked list I have zero data points, where should my head point? Where should be the head pointing at? And even if it is pointing at a node, then where that node should be pointing at? Can we quickly get that in chat? Let us see how many of you are able to answer that. So good evening to all the people. Good evening for all the people in the live chat, especially. I like when we remain interactive. Okay. So Prerak has answered -1, which is a very more technical answer, and I will agree with it. That's not something that is wrong. It is correct, in fact. So yes, Vloggy has answered correctly. Null. Yes, Emperia is again coming up with -1. Perfect. So I'll agree with you all. So what you all tend to say is that head should point at null, basically, right? Or could be -1 if we set -1 as our null. Okay. The idea is that linked list will only follow start from head, और ये arrows का गेम है. अगर head के नीचे कोई भी डेटा नहीं है तो let that arrow be on null. अब इनके बीच में अगर कोई डेटा आ रहा है, fair enough, let that head go to the data and then that data should go to null. Okay, so that's how linked lists are created. Now, let us understand from this very particular case which is available in front of your image. What if now I have to add one more point, say E? Okay, so how do I do that? The logic is that I should start from the head and traverse to a point until I find null. क्यों? क्योंकि मुझे insert करना है where this link ends, right? Where this list ends. Last में चीज append करनी है. So again, I'll start with a for loop for like starting point until and unless उसके next पे null पड़ा है, keep on iterating. Okay, if data point at A का next points to null, then वो वहां पर insert करेंगे. बट अगर नहीं तो फिर find next element B, फिर वापस लूप में जाओ. इफ B का next points to null, ठीक है, C next null, ठीक है, D पे जब आओगे then your if statement will work. It is like if D का next points to null, if it's true, then what you will do is you will then go एंड चेंज कि डी के नेक्स्ट पे अब ई को पॉइंट करना है और ई के नेक्स्ट पे अब नल को पॉइंट करना है. Fair enough. This explains the concept of how we can add elements, how we can delete elements. For example, if I have to delete an element at the end, D को delete करना है तो very simple, D पे जाओ, D का next clear कर दो, D को delete ही कर दो, C के next पे अब null लगा दो. What if I have to delete a element in between of this linked list? C को हटाना है, कोई बात नहीं, C पे जाओ. ओके, एंड अब कैसे जाओगे तो C की वैल्यू से मैप कर सकते हो. इफ वैल्यू एट दिस नोड इक्वल्स टू दैट पर्टिकुलर वैल्यू यू आर लुकिंग फॉर, तो C को अगर ढूंढ लिया आपने तो यू कैन बेसिकली गो बैक टू द प्रीवियस नोड, B पे जाओ और B के नेक्स्ट पे अब उसके नेक्स्ट नोड D को अटैच कर दो. सो दीज आर फ्यू बेसिक ways you can do it. And if the idea is to do this, I will recommend to go with doubly linked list. कि doubly linked list में क्या हो जाता है कि एक नोड पे rather than storing just one single data point, just one next point, we also add one more arrow which is the previous. So for example, if this was a doubly linked list, A का next will be pointing to B, but A का previous will be pointing to head. Similarly, B's next would be pointing to C and B's previous would be pointing to A, right? So there are two ways of interaction. Forward and backward propagation both can happen in doubly linked list. Okay, and what makes a link circular is nothing but last node jo hai D, rather than pointing at null, it should point back to A. That's a circular linked list. And I told you it won't be very difficult once you get up the concept of singly linked list to work with it. Now let us go back and try to understand how can we exactly create something like a linked list in C++, right? So for that, I'll start with the coding. Let us include a basic library, hashtag include IOStream using namespace standard. Okay. Now we will create a class node, okay, which will represent our data point and also point to the next. Okay. So we'll create a class node. Okay. And the idea is that these are some features that I was talking about. That whenever an object is born, it by default spawns with few of the characteristics defined for it. So if class was human and the attributes were ear, nose, eyes, so in this case, if class is node, then the attributes are it will have a data, integer data will be its attribute, and then there will be a pointer to next, okay, which will be like the address of the next location. So this is how we define a class, and then let us create a default constructor. Okay, what that means is that whenever someone has to create an object, then they have to define data. By default, let it be 0. By default, let next be equal to null. Okay, so null is a reserved keyword in C++. It will understand null means nothing, empty, -1. Okay, and then we will create a parameterized constructor. What that would mean is that if someone is passing parameters that let the data be this and next be this, then we will use that. Okay, so parameterized constructor would be that if someone is getting node and they are passing data as the input, in that case, this is a reserved keyword that this data, like for this instance, like for this particular human, data should be equal to whatever is passed, and for this human, the next should be the null now. Okay, so that's a fair idea on how you can create a class that will represent your node. Okay, so node में डेटा होता है और नेक्स्ट का पॉइंटर होता है. डिफॉल्ट कंस्ट्रक्टर अगर कोई आपको डेटा नहीं दे रहा है, बस नोड बनाने बोल रहा है, तो आप डेटा में 0 डाल देना और नेक्स्ट को नल पे लगा देना. बट अगर कोई डेटा पास कर रहा है, इन दैट केस लेट अस यूटिलाइज दैट डेटा फॉर दिस इंस्टेंस, एंड फॉर दिस इंस्टेंस के नेक्स्ट पे नल लगा देंगे. ठीक है, so this is an idea of how to create node. Now let us again think about one more class, which is linked list. Class linked list लगाते हैं. Okay, so where basically we will create a node reference to head, है ना, that head बना लो एक. Okay, in this we will declare some public variables. Public variables का नाम, what does public variable mean is that these variables are accessible throughout the code in public area, whereas some variables are local variables which are only restricted in certain functions. So again, the idea of that could be understood that suppose that when I come to my home, maybe people call me GD at this point. Okay, for Gaurav Deep they can go for GD. So GD is a very local reference, right? Maybe if I am not in my function, I'm moving around in say other parts of India, then maybe people will not know what GD means, right? People will only what Gaurav Deep means if they know about it, if they're a part of the program, right, in the very first place. So local variables are something that is created inside a function, and they reside only inside the function, and only a function knows that what it means. Apart from it, the global code has nothing to do with it. So similarly, when we are creating a class, the public variables are something which is accessible to the entire code. Like any place of the code, you will know what the variables inside public mean, right? So inside public, we will go for a default constructor. Okay. So here the idea is linked list, and let us talk about then. We will start by default with head equals to null. Okay, that's one idea. Fine, fair enough. Okay, okay. Let us check. NULL. Okay, fine. Now let us create a function to add some any data or any node in the end of the linked list, right? So here we will create. So the idea is that we are just declaring, right, our function. We are not giving the exact code at this point. We are just making sure that our program understands that okay, there will be a function which will be by the name of insert node. Since it is in the public scope, function will the program will understand it everywhere. Okay. Then we will create a function to print the linked list. Okay. So we will create void print list. Then let us create a function to delete the node at given position. Okay. So void delete node at the given point. Okay. So this is a little bit about the class linked list. And if you look at carefully in the public domain, I have just written 3 function names, not written the logic of how this function is supposed to work, right? So the idea is that I'll declare them in a later space, and the syntax to do that is once you close the curly braces, now you can start up individually with the function. Okay, so the first function that I created was the delete node, or maybe like the print list or things like that, right? So in order to access the function, we need to first write the list, the class name. So linked list is my class name, and in linked list full colons, I have 4 functions or 3 functions and 1 class name that is visible here. Let me start with the delete node. Okay. So when I start with the delete node, it takes in 1 integer, right? So let that be node offset. Okay. So I've taken up 1 integer, and in this case, what we will do is now we will define the function. Okay. So let us now start defining, say, node. I'll refer back to maybe a temporary variable in which I'll keep the head. ठीक है, अभी हम क्या करते हैं, हम एक temporary variable बना रहे हैं which is also an object of node class. इसमें हम head को store कर रहे हैं, ठीक है, and temporary variable 2 बना रहे हैं जिसमें हम अभी null को store कर रहे हैं. Okay, these are few temporary things that I'm creating. Okay, I'll create integer list की length का start from 0. This is again one static variable that I'm creating. I'll always use it. If अब मुझे चेक क्या करना है कि जो मुझे नोड ऑफसेट आया है अगर उसका हेड ही नल है तो लिस्ट एम्प्टी है, राइट? In that case, there is no sense or no point in running through the entire code, right? So if the head is equals to null, right? If that is the case, then in this case, I should just call out that given list is empty, okay, and just end it and return from this point, right? Return statement always tells us that go out of the function. So delete node function should stop here, right? But while I will use a while loop, okay? While temp one में जो store हो रहा है, while temp one में जो store हो रहा है, if it is not equal to null, okay? Then in that case, temp one पे हम क्या करेंगे? Now look at it carefully. Line number 37. What are we storing in temp? We are storing the head, right? So if it is not null, if head is not null, then we will start from head and go to the next node. So temp one से आप next node पे जाके इसमें store कर दो. Okay. Now what will happen is that it will now go to point B. फिर point B पे आके वापस check करेगा. While loop चल रहा है ना? While loop it will be in it forever until unless it finds the last node जहां पर वो null point कर रहा है. Okay, so we will go from here and we will keep on iterating the list length by 1. ठीक है, so by default plus plus would mean +1 हो जाए वहां पर. So this is once again the idea that maybe we are going from temp 1 to next, and then list is being, you can say, list की length को हम +1 करते जा रहे हैं at this point. Okay, so this is about your while loop. Okay, now we talk about the next point, which is once we have understood that we found the length of the list, okay, check the position of the node which is to be deleted is greater than the length of the linked list, है ना? If that is the case, what does it mean? How do we do it, right? So if हमारा list length, something that we have found out, right, is less than the node offset, So this is a node that has been given to us. Basically, this node was not even created. Suppose if the length of the list is only 3 and you're asking me to delete the 5th node, how is that even possible, right? So I'll have to see out that the index that you're planning to delete index is out of range. Hi, good evening to all the people coming in chat. And we will just return from this point. So that's then, right? Now, what we'll have to do is we will have to then move ahead, and then if these conditions are not at all satisfied, अभी तक हम loop में हैं, then we'll store the value of head, okay? And because we want to just store head somewhere, and we will just delete the head from this point, okay? So let us say deleting the head. तो अगर तो हमारा node offset value जो आई थी, if it was equal to 1, then in that case we need to update the head, है ना? Because we need to just delete the first node. तो first node delete कर रहे हैं तो हमें head को change करना पड़ेगा. तो basically जो head है अब वो next के head पे लग जाना चाहिए जाके. So that will be our new head now. I'll explain what does this piece of code means. देखो head is the starting node, right? तो head के next पे जो पड़ा है that is the next node. अब if I have to delete the head, I need the next node to be my starting point. तो head के अंदर what I'm storing the address of next point, and now I'll just delete temp1. देखो now I will just go and I'll delete temp1. So, but my head has the next का address now. Head के next पे जो चीज थी that has become my head now, and temp1 can be deleted. Okay, once it is done, we can return. Okay, but so we will have to traverse through the list until and unless we find the node to be deleted, है ना? So what does this mean is that suppose if first node was not something that we wanted to delete, we can do node offset while it basically points to 1. Basically, we will have to just keep on iterating, right? So we will have to keep on updating के temp2 में temp1 लगा दो, okay? And temp1 पे आप basically temp1 का next store करते जाओ. So this is how we will have the two links, right? Current node and next node, okay? So current node and next node will be stored like this. Now what we will do is we will change the pointer of the previous node. So maybe like temp2 pointer will be updated. So temp2 के जो next पे है, now that should point to temp1 का next, right? Because we are planning to delete temp1. I'll explain you what is happening here. See, let us start with this point. temp2 line number 64 temp2 इमेजिन कर लो इसमें मैंने a स्टोर कर दिया है, ठीक है? लाइन नंबर 64 पे temp2 में a है, temp1 में भी a ही है क्योंकि both are becoming equal at लाइन नंबर 64. लाइन नंबर 64 पे ध्यान दो, temp2 is a for instance a node है. 65 लाइन नंबर पे आओगे, लेट मी हाईलाइट 65 लाइन नंबर राइट ओवर हियर. 65 लाइन नंबर पे जब आओगे, यू आर प्रोग्रेसिंग. अब temp1 को आप b नोड पे लेके जा रहे हैं, तो temp1 has now become b नोड, ओके? तो temp2 में a है, temp1 में b है, तो temp1 के नेक्स्ट पे क्या है? temp1 के नेक्स्ट पे c पड़ा है. So what we are doing is, let us come back. मैं यहाँ पर I'll write in comments, imagine temp2 is equals to a, therefore now temp1 is equals to b हो गया. तो बेसिकली temp2 का नेक्स्ट हमने temp2 में क्या रखा हुआ है? a, तो उसका नेक्स्ट क्या है? b होना चाहिए, ठीक है? एंड temp1 का नेक्स्ट should be equals to c, okay? So this is how we are updating के that c का कनेक्शन अब बैठ जाए प्रीवियस नोड के साथ और हम बीच एक नोड गायब कर सके, राइट? So this is how basically things will work. And once temp2 is pointing, temp2 का next is pointing to temp1 का next, then we can just delete temp1 and be good with it, right? हमारा कोई भी arrow कहीं पर भी टूटा नहीं है. Imagine and remember कि linked list only works with arrows. If at all any given point we try to delete any arrow, we are completely losing the connection with linked list. If you by mistake have designed a code, any part of the code, any piece of the line, which will end up losing any connection, you will end up losing your linked list in running memory. Okay. The only idea is then you will have to just flush out the memory, clean RAM, restart, fix your bug. पहले तो bug ढूंढना पड़ेगा. Once you identify कि I am somewhere I am losing connection, जिसकी वजह से linked list break हो जा रही है, fix that. Only then you can recover your linked list, right? Only then the code will work. So every time the only idea is arrows को जोड़ना है बस. At any given stage, if you're writing a code, your code should update the arrows. अगर B को delete करना था तो अब A C में point करना चाहिए, right? So that's the idea. So अब basically temp to is A, मैंने यहाँ पर उसको B लिख दिया था, little typing mistake by me. तो अब A C पे point करना चाहिए, right? temp to का next पे C होना चाहिए. So that's the idea, and that's how linked lists are supposed to work. Okay. So similarly, we can now also take this opportunity to go ahead and define अपने next function, which is to insert a node, right? Insert maybe what should be the logic of insert? Suppose if I have to between C and say E, if I have to add a node, say D add करना है C और E के अंदर, so currently C should be pointing to E. In the current structure, C should be pointing to E. But अगर इन दोनों के बीच D बिठाना है, what I'll have to do is कि C का arrow should now go to D and D के arrow पे अब E लग जाना चाहिए, right? There should be always forward arrows in a sequence. So let us understand how we can achieve something like this. So we'll go with void linked list. Okay, that's our class name. इसके function को लगाते हैं. कौन सा function लगाने जा रहे हैं? हम insert node लगाने जा रहे हैं. Okay, suppose we have to do insert node. So it takes data as input. So what we will do is we'll create a new node. Okay, so let us create a node. Of course, we are referencing it to a pointer. Let's call it new node. इसमें new node. You know this variable new है ना? It is used to allocate memory dynamically. So हम dynamically running केस के अंदर हम node add करने जा रहे हैं data. Okay, and we will assign a head to it. ये कब करेंगे? जब हमारा linked list empty है. So if हमारा head is by default equals to null, so in this case what we will do is head के आगे न्यू नोड लगा दो. वेरी सिंपल. यहीं पर कोड खत्म हो जाएगा. न्यू नोड लग गई एंड न्यू नोड के आगे नल भी लगाना है. ठीक है, वो बाय डिफॉल्ट लगा होगा क्योंकि whenever we create, remember whenever we create node, तो नोड के अंदर हम बाय डिफॉल्ट नेक्स्ट पे नल लगा के देते हैं. यू कैन रिविजिट द कोड. लेट अस गो बैक टू द कोड एंड फॉर नोड यू कैन चेक द डिफॉल्ट कंस्ट्रक्टर क्या करता है. बाय डिफॉल्ट और पैरामीटराइज के अंदर भी जब हम डेटा लगा भी रहे हैं, बाय डिफॉल्ट हम नेक्स्ट नल रखते हैं, राइट? रिमेंबर दैट पार्ट. सो कमिंग बैक टू आवर कोड, सो व्हेन वी आर क्रिएटिंग अ न्यू नोड, वी जस्ट नीड टू मैप द अगर हेड से मैप कर रहे हैं, वी जस्ट नीड टू मैप हेड पे न्यू नोड आ गया है. वी बाय डिफॉल्ट न्यू नोड के नेक्स्ट पे नल पड़ा है, राइट? दैट्स द आइडिया. So fair enough. With this, we can traverse till the end of the list. अगर ये केस नहीं था, मानो लिस्ट के अंदर काफी डेटा पॉइंट्स पड़े हुए थे, या एक या दो भी डेटा पॉइंट्स थे, we'll traverse the list till the end. Okay. So what we will do is here we will do node and we will go for temp is equals to head. Okay. तो हेड को हम कहीं स्टोर करते जाएंगे और while लूप लगाएंगे. while temp के नेक्स्ट पे नल नहीं मिल जाता, which means we are traversing through this linked list, हम temp को अपडेट करते रहेंगे. temp के ऊपर नेक्स्ट वेरिएबल आके बैठा रहे, temp का नेक्स्ट आ जाए इसके ऊपर. ओके, सिंपल लूप. कीप ऑन अपडेटिंग द temp, कीप अपडेटिंग द temp. ओके, temp के नेक्स्ट पे हमने लगा दिया. Now this is your simple while loop. अब जब ये while loop ब्रेक हो जाएगी, then what you have to do is उसके आगे अपना नया नोड लगा दो. Insert the new node once you traversed till the end. Okay, what does this mean? कि temp के next pay up basically you can add a new node. Okay, and fair enough. Okay, new node, perfect. So that's the idea, okay, how you can insert things at the end of a linked list, है ना? Now let us also try to imagine that what if I have to print my linked list, singly linked list, right? So for that, again, I have a void uh, linked list. Now the function name is print list in my case. Okay, so it will not take any input. It will just start off that it will create a node, a reference. Temp पे हम एक node लगाएंगे which is our head. Okay, we'll check if the list is empty or not. Check if the linked list is empty. In this case, if head is equals to null, then what we will do is see out list empty and simply return from here. Okay, we cannot print it, but while it is not empty, we will keep on printing it. So while temp is not equal to null, which means that we are keep still finding more and more nodes in this list, see out temp data. Okay, so whatever data temp is storing, just print it, एक space दे दो बीच में so that it looks good, and once you're done with it, use a semicolon and temp update कर दो. Temp should be now pointing to the next, and once this is done, fair enough, you have done your part of the code. Now you can simply start writing the main block. Okay, so we'll now create the driver function. Usually driver function is given by the name of main. Int main return 0, and now we will create one object of linked list. Let us call it list. So for demo, let's upload few nodes. Okay, so that's what we'll do. List dot insert node 1, copy, paste, 2, 3, 4, and maybe 5. Okay, see out elements of the list are semicolon. Let us print the linked list dot print list, because list is an object of the class linked list, and for the object whatever functions or the attributes that are written will be visible and available. तो list के अंदर एक function है, list के अंदर एक object है, sorry, list के अंदर एक attribute है which is print list. Let us just call it, और लास्ट में हम एक स्लैश n लगा देते हैं. This will print out all the linked list available, है ना? Now what we have to delete something from our list. Okay, so in order to delete that, let us delete, okay, just a second, delete a node at position 2. Okay, so list dot delete node एक function है, मैं बोल रहा हूँ second position पे उसको delete कर दो जो भी पड़ा है. Okay, and then see out, let us just copy this, and let us just copy this. So let us just once understand that whatever we have done till this point, what is supposed to mean, right? So we have created a C++ program to mimic and show how the data structure of linked list can be coded here, right? So now I'll just try to run this code once. I'll just try to run this. In the terminal, you will be able to see that elements of the list are 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the values which I'm able to fetch by using my linked list logic. And after deleting the elements at position 2, I'm able to do that also, right? So that's a fair idea of how we can create and execute linked lists in C++, right? Now, for your you can say future ventures, what I'll give you as a tip is that you should now start understanding the logics of doubly linked list and circular linked list parallelly, right? The idea will be that your assignment should be that in C++ you should start implementing linked list, right? Just go on the browser and search for linked list applications in C++. Follow our tutorial, follow whatever we have done. I'll provide you the source code if needed. In tomorrow's session, we can just provide you these notes, and with the notes you can just use this solution, try to implement it at your level, and understand to the core of what linked list means, right? In the interviews of DSA, uh, for basic level, of course, you will be asked to solve linked list, double linked list problems. So also go on mm, online and find for problems, right? That linked list related problems. How do I solve it? Try to solve those mini problems. Make sure that the idea and the concept of linked list is very clear to you. What does next mean? What does data means? Next is just an arrow pointing to the next data, right? And why does the last data points to null? And why do we need a head in the linked list to start with, right? Understand different concepts like doubly linked list, circular linked list, or singly linked list, right? That will definitely help you. And I would like to wish you a very interesting and happy luck, so that you find yourself successful at the end and are able to just learn the concept of linked list and be done with it, right? So I'll see you all tomorrow with more interesting data structure discussions and more of the code to be done, right? So thank you so much for joining in and tuning today. I'll see you all tomorrow. Tata, bye bye, sayonara. See you all tomorrow.